everybody and welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting podcast and this is episode 42. I have got 2 finished objects to talk through today and 1 whip. I do have another whip which I didn't talk about last week either, and I'm not going to talk about it this week because I have not worked on it, and that is my Colette Pullover by SARI NORDLUND, and it will come back. I've just had other priorities, and so yeah, it's just not going to be a part of this week's podcast, but that is fine. So yeah, like I said, 2 finished objects and 1 whip. Before I get into that, I'll do all of my housekeeping. So as always, links to absolutely everything that I talk about, patterns if I can link them, yarns, makers, anything that I mention in these videos will be linked down below in the description box. And you can also find me on Instagram and Ravelry as @knitsbyaj. There will also be timestamps throughout the video down in the description box, so if you want to flip between projects, if you only want to see one, then that's absolutely fine, and that is available for you. So without further waffling, let's get into some knitting. So my first finished object that I'm going to talk about today is my Amelia top, which is what I am wearing, and this is a test knit that I have been doing for Iris of HIRIS Makes, and I knit up size 1 and I used Cardiff Cashmere Classic in the colour Nero. I did have to go up. Oh, hello. Do you need a wee? You're just going to sit there and stare at me? Do you need a wee? 1 second, I've got to let the dog out. Okay, brief interlude over. I had to go up a needle size for this pattern. The recommended needles are a 4mm and a 4.5mm needle. I had to go up to a 4.5mm needle for my ribbing and a 5mm for my main fabric, and that is purely because of my yarn choice. Previously I have knit a couple of Iris's patterns and I have always managed to get gauge bang on with the recommended needle size. I think the way that we knit is maybe quite similar, and we have a similar gauge. However, my yarn choice with this one just meant that I had to go up a needle size, and that's because it was quite sticky. I didn't really anticipate how sticky the cashmere was going to be. I think I spoke about this a couple of episodes ago, and it was quite surprising. It was not really like anything that I've knitted with before, because it's like grip. I wouldn't even say it's sticky, it's grippy. It really grips onto itself and my needles in the same way that maybe like a very much more rustic yarn would do, but it's also very kind of like stretchy and bouncy, like you would get with maybe like a super soft merino as well. So those 2 elements of it were a little bit of a surprise for me, because usually I would get either one or the other with a rustic yarn or with like a very super soft sort of merino type yarn, and it just took a little bit of getting used to, and obviously meant that I had to go up another needle size, which is fine. I mean, the gauge on this is absolutely beautiful, and I think with this cashmere yarn it blooms so beautifully. So being knit at that sort of slightly looser gauge of 18 stitches for a DK weight yarn, it's a beautifully light, airy garment without being at all sheer. And I think that's one thing that has also surprised me about this as a finished object. It's so light. So I haven't actually weighed this yet. I will weigh this after I have filmed this, and I will put up here how much it actually weighs. However, I only used, I think, just over 4 balls. So it's probably around the sort of like 100-gram mark for a full t-shirt, and like I got quite a lot of length on this. So obviously it sits well below the waistband of my jeans, and I think it's at the kind of like the perfect sort of semi-cropped length for me, where it's below the waistband of my jeans, so I can lift my arms and not show any skin, which I don't always want, to be honest. I get quite cold. So yeah, I can lift my arms without really showing any skin, but I can also sort of do like the full French tuck, and it's also not too much extra fabric, because I do tend to only wear high-waisted bottoms now, and so I could quite easily put this over the top of a dress, or I could put it with my high-waisted bottoms and not have like an excess of fabric. So I think it's worked out really, really nicely. I did crop it slightly from what the pattern suggests, but that's purely just based on my own personal preference. So yeah, this knit up really, really quickly in the end. So last week, I don't think I had sleeves or a neckband, and I was only maybe sort of halfway down the body, and it took me like next to no time to get the sleeves and the neckband done, because it's a if I get my hair out of the way, because it's a contiguous construction, you've already knit most of the sleeve before you split for the underarm, because of the way that the increases are worked. It's sort of like, I would say that a contiguous construction, after having worked it for the first time, is sort of like halfway between a raglan and a drop shoulder, or a set-in sleeve, sorry, because you obviously have the look of a set-in sleeve, which you probably can't see because this is black. You have the look of the set-in sleeve, but then you're knitting in the round a lot earlier. And it was really good fun. It was really interesting to learn a new skill, to learn a new construction, and I really, really enjoyed knitting it. It's explained so clearly, like everything in Iris's patterns. She's just spot on with her ability to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. There's no confusion, and yeah, she's just so clear and precise with her pattern writing, and it's always such a dream to work up one of her patterns, because like there's just no like, what am I doing moments. So yeah, I absolutely love the fit of this. I did end up with a little bit more positive ease than I had initially intended. I got gauge bang on, because I measured at a certain point in the month, I had slightly more negative ease at that point than I do now. But I think that is a lovely way of being able to knit this up. There is such a range in the sizing, so you can either knit this up with up to 1.75 centimeters of negative ease, or all the way up to 5 centimeters of positive ease. And there are pictures in the pattern of models showing both ends of that ease scale, which is absolutely amazing. A lovely addition. And I think a couple of us testers have all knit it up at various different sort of stages in the ease range. So there should be loads of pictures to help you choose the best sizing for you. There are 9 sizes in this pattern, ranging from a finished bust of 75 centimeters all the way up to 156 centimeters. And that is 29 to 61.5 centimeters. No, not centimeters, inches. And the gauge is 18 stitches by 26 rounds in 10 centimeters, which I think is very, very achievable, and gives you such a lightweight, beautiful t-shirt. I would say that this is probably my favorite knitted tee. Like, just the details, like the pearl row, I have no idea if you can see this, but there's like a pearl row at the neckband, and also a bit easier to see on the sleeves, and also on the bottom of the body. All of those little different details just add together to make this the most wonderful, basic, like elevated basic t-shirt. And I really do want to cast on another one. I want to see how this works up in a different yarn. I've got some, I don't think I can get to it from here, but I have got some cotton merino that in a DK that I'd quite like to be able to work this up in a striped version, because I think it's just a wonderful basic tee, and I think that the contiguous construction just makes it so much more fun to work up, because you're not having to do lots of working flat. It's very minimal working flat before you join in the round. So yes, I'm so unbelievably happy with this. I absolutely love it. I will try and get some B-roll where you can kind of see the details of it a little bit better, but as it is black, it's quite difficult. But I will also get some B-roll so that you can kind of see the fit a little bit better than me just sitting down or trying to awkwardly stand up for you. So yes, I cast this on September the 26th, and I cast it off on October the 14th. And so all in all, it took me a grand total of 19 days to knit this, and that was not monogamously knitting this at all. I put this down for a couple of days without looking at it, and so it is also a really, really quick knit. And it's very moorish, despite it just being stockinette. It's just very moorish. I just wanted to keep coming back to it. So cost wise, pattern for me was free for testing purposes. However, based on other t-shirt patterns that Iris has put out, you're looking at around about £7 for the pattern. Obviously that's not confirmed, but yes, based on other pricing that she has, we're looking at around about £7 most likely. The yarn for me was £65. I bought 5 balls of this for £13 each, and I got mine from a company called Knitted Home. I will have them linked below. They worked out to be slightly cheaper than other places that I found this yarn, so I will link them down below for you guys if you wanted to check them out. So that gives me a grand total of £65 for this t-shirt. However, if you were to knit this and you would to purchase the pattern and the yarn, you would be looking at around about £72, which is obviously on the pricier side, but this is a real kind of like luxury piece for me, and I think it fits in my wardrobe so nicely, and I'm going to get loads of use out of it. The test deadline for this is like late November. So I would assume that we're looking at sort of like an end of November, early December release. However, that's not been confirmed as of yet, and I'll kind of keep you guys updated as and when I know a little bit more about when this pattern's going to be released, because I think it would be such a lovely knit for the sort of holiday season. It knits up quite quickly, like I've said. I think it would be a really lovely like elevated basic for the holiday period. But yeah, that is my Amelia tee, and I'm so happy to have this in my wardrobe. It's so warm as well, shockingly warm. I knew that cashmere was a warm fibre, but I didn't expect it to be quite this warm. So I'm quite happy just sat here in my t-shirt, and it is not warm today. We've kind of delved into the real world of autumn where it's barely getting above 10 degrees. And so yes, very cosy. So my second finished object is my Colorwork Cuff Club socks, which is a pattern by Summer Lee. I have banged on about this Colorwork Cuff Club pattern for 3 months now, I suppose, because this is the 3rd instalment. But yes, I knit size medium as always, and last week I had finished one sock and now I have finished them both. And I love them. I think they're so cute. I was really looking forward to having some more kind of like Halloween-y socks, but not really like in your face Halloween, and I think this green has really helped with that. They're kind of understated ghosts, not too in your face I'm a spooky ghost. So yarn wise I used Rico Superba Tweed in the colour 05 and West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the colour Marshmallow. And I used a 2mm needle for my ribbing and my colourwork, and then a 2.25 for the rest of my sock. And I went into some detail about these last week, but I essentially just knit up the second sock exactly the same as the first. So I added in the stripe at the ribbing, which was not part of the pattern, and I added in the 2 extra chart repeats, which were also not part of the pattern, and I knit that middle one the opposite way. So instead of knitting it from right to left, I knit it from left to right, just to make sure that the ghosts went the other way. And yeah, these are all ready for me to wear. I really loved working up this chart. I think it was so much fun, and I felt like it went really, really quickly, but that's probably because I was just having so much fun knitting it. I did knit these up slightly differently to my other Colorwork Cuff Club socks. So my August and September socks I knit 2 at a time on 2 small circular needles, whereas these ones I knit 1 at a time. Because of the way that my yarn worked out, it just wasn't gonna be all that easy for me to work from both ends of the ball, and so I decided to just work them 1 at a time. It also made them just that little bit more portable. Like once I got through the colour work, I could just take the sock and the yarn with me in my project bag when I was out and about. Instead of having two working ends of the yarn to have to deal with and then getting tangled in the bag and everything and having two socks to cart around with you, it was just a little bit easier to work with. And yeah, so I worked them one at a time, and I think that really spurred me on to get them finished as well, because I got through the colourwork on the first one, and then I was immediately ready to knit the colourwork on the second one, which then made me want to get through the foot a little bit faster so that I could get to the colourwork on the second sock. And so yeah, they felt like they absolutely flew off the needles, and I absolutely love them. I think they are so much fun. And as always, I'm so interested to see what the November release is going to be. I feel like we all kind of are anticipating that December is going to be fairly festive. And so I'm sort of wondering where we're going with November. So I cast these on October the 2nd, and I cast them off on October the 15th. And so they took me a grand total of 14 days to knit. And actually, I think 14 days for a full colourwork cuff and foot is pretty good for two socks. Definitely much faster than last month. And these neps are just so much fun. Cost-wise, I paid £9.73 for the pattern. That price has gone up because I bought the pattern in the first month that it had been released, and so it was on a discount. I think it's around about the sort of like £10.70 mark now, so not too much more expensive. And to be honest, I even think that's really cost effective, because you're essentially getting 12 sock patterns for the price of 2 or 3. So still very cost effective, but slightly more than I paid. The Superba Tweed was £8.95 for one ball, and the West Yorkshire Spinners was £8.95 as well for one ball. So that brings my grand total for these socks to £27.63. So not that expensive for a pair of colourwork socks. The price of these is always elevated because of the need for more than one ball of yarn. But I never use a whole ball to knit them. I've got a good amount of the tweed left over, which I've not put back. And I have a little bit of the marshmallow left over, but not very much. I only had a really small amount to begin with. So yeah, that's really done, it's really done me well, the marshmallow, because I think I've used it in maybe 3 pairs of socks already. So it's really good going on it. But yes, that is my Colourwork Cuff Club pair of socks for the month of October. And I love them. And so that brings me to my one and only whip for this week, which is the West Sand Sweater by Journey Through Yarn. And I am using BC Garn Loch Lomond in the colours Sand, Sand, Nougat, Moss, and Pine, which are these beautiful earthy tones. This green on the end, the pine, is definitely showing up a little bit brighter on camera, but possibly just because there's a window over there. So yes, this is my colour choices, and I am knitting up size 1, and I'm using a 3.25mm needle for my ribbing and a 3.75 for my main fabric, which is one size down from what the pattern suggests. Pattern suggests to use a 4mm and a 3.5mm, but my gauge is just a little bit looser now, which is fine. So since last week I have, where is my marker? Okay, so this marker here, this gummy bear, is where I was last week, and so I have finished up the colourwork on the body, and I have started the ribbing on the bottom of the body. So this has just been flying off my needles. It's one of those, it kind of falls into the realm of the like one more stripe kind of knitting, because the colourwork is in these sort of like 10-row bands, and then you get a band of stockinette and then another band of colourwork. It kind of falls into that, oh, I'll just get to the end of this section, and then, oh, hang on, I'll just get to the end of this section. And so it just feels very, very Moorish to knit. So I am almost halfway through the ribbing on the bottom of the body. And yeah, it just feels like it's flown off the needles. I haven't made as much progress on this as I did the week before, but that's perfectly fine. There is a fairly long test knit. The deadline isn't until the end of, well, the middle to end of December. So I am flying through at this rate. But I do really want to get this to a point where I can wear it, because it is just such a lovely sweater. It's going to be so warm and snuggly. The yarn is a woolen spun yarn, and I have used it for another jumper, my older sweater, which I've been wearing so much at the moment because it's so light but also really, really warm. And that's kind of just something that I've been leaning into, something that I don't really need to think about wearing. Like, it's not big and bulky and cumbersome, it's just light and almost like just wearing a t-shirt, but you're warm and cozy and snuggly in a nice jumper, which is just exactly what I want. So one of the things I really love about this design is the contrast, like cast on and bind offs on the bottom of the body and the top of the neckline and the bottom of the sleeves. And so I used moss as my contrast for the neckline. And so I've decided I'm going to use pine as the bind off on the bottom of the body. And then that leaves me nougat for the sleeves, which I think is going to be a really nice contrast. And also I quite like the idea of having a darker yarn on the bottom of this, at the very end of the sleeve, because I feel like if there's any bit of my jumpers that are going to get a little bit grubby, it's usually going to be that part. I wear my jumpers to absolute death, and I like wear them to the washing up and out in the garden and doing various like crafting things that are usually quite messy with my daughter, so that is usually the point that it's going to get quite grubby. And so yeah, I think the nougat is going to be a really good so this is the nougat, so I think this is going to be a really good option for the end of the sleeves. Oh dear. Just being that really nice warm brown. And I love the fact that all of these yarns have like a bit of like a tweed aspect to them, and they've all got flecks of each other in the yarns, so they really go well together. They really kind of like pull into each other, and I think that's really helping to kind of like pull all of the colours together. But yeah, I've been absolutely loving knitting this, and like I say, I can't wait to get to the point where I can actually wear it. So this week my plan is to finish off the bottom ribbing and get that contrast bind off done, and I would also like to try and get through one sleeve. We are going out for my birthday, which is at the end of the month, and so I'd quite like to be able to wear this sort of like during the day. If this weather carries on, then it's probably going to be quite chilly, and so yeah, I think it's going to be a really lovely sort of cozy layer to be able to wear out for our day out. So yeah, I've got a fair bit of time before then to really take my time on this, but I would like to get through a sleeve. I'm also really interested to see how this colourwork corresponds on the sleeves. I read the sample photo, the sleeves match up beautifully, so I'm really hoping that mine will also match up beautifully. But yeah, I really, really love this, and I cannot wait to wear it. So Rebecca has recently put out a podcast episode, which I will have linked down below, where she goes into detail about this design. And I do believe that she says in that podcast that she is aiming for a release date between Christmas and New Year. I did get a couple of questions last week whether or not I knew when this design was being released. I don't have a definitive date, but if all goes well with the test knit, then she has said that it will be between Christmas and New Year this year. So fingers crossed that it all goes well. And I'm really excited for you guys to be able to cast one of these on, because it's just such a fun knit. And the same with the Amelia, like they are just beautifully written patterns, and really, really great, like classic pieces to have in your wardrobe. And I think you could have so much fun with the colour choices in this one. So I cast this on October 3rd, and so it has currently been on my needles for 14 days. So I am pleasantly surprised with my progress in 14 days. This feels like a lot, but then I was ill, so I had more knitting time. But yes, absolutely love this. Cannot wait to be able to wear it. So that is everything from me this week, knitting wise. I hope you have all had a wonderful week, and I hope you all have a wonderful week going forward. I hope you get lots of crafting time in. I always kind of lose my train of thought when I'm ending these. But thank you so very much for watching. If you have liked this video, please do feel free to give it a like. If you are new here and you fancy sticking around, please do subscribe. And I will catch up with you all next week with some more knitting. Happy making!